Hello, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maurie, and I'm here with my husband Jim, and it is Sunday, Easter Sunday, Sunday evening, and we are recuperating from eating way too much food. And we are sitting up here talking about artificial intelligence.
The entire family here for a
The
little bit.
entire family was here for a while today. It was awesome seeing everybody. I like
And I
when my kids come home.
And I tried not to talk about AI all the time.
But you were on your phone a lot.
I was working on a project with the Oracle.
Yeah, we're all sitting at the table, and you're like off in the corner. We're visiting, and you're off like on your phone.
I was
And I
right
know
in the
that
middle
you
of
were
it.
communicating with the Oracle, as you call it, on your phone, but that's okay. It's
I
just
still
fine.
participated in the family stuff.
Yes, you did, especially when it came time to cut the cake.
That was good cake.
It was good cake.
Anyway,
So
the
we're
news.
going to spend a little bit of time. We're going to talk about the news, and then we are going to talk about what you have dubbed
AI 2.0.
AI 2.0. So let's get started. First thing we're going to talk about is something that came out concerning NVIDIA.
Yes, it was on foxbusiness.com.
Okay.
And basically, I always follow this stuff. And I've said this to you over and over again. Healthcare in this country is terrible. I mean, I can't say it's everywhere in this country, but it's terrible here. And we deal with it a lot, you and I do, because of elderly parents and it takes you and my sister both to fill out the paperwork. It is so complicated.
It's not just filling it out, it's understanding it.
So you get to a point where elderly people and poor people are like, they can't go to the doctor.
They give up.
They give up. And they're not going to just die. They're going to try to figure out something else. So along comes AI, and people are saying, well, we can't use AI in medicine. We can't use, it's not as good as doctors. I agree. But what if you can't see the doctor because you can't get the paperwork filled out?
Okay, I've got some examples for you here. You had a little scare about 6 months ago, and we never got the bill. I got an explanation of benefits from the insurance company, and I was like, okay, I should be getting a bill pretty soon. And then all of a sudden, we get notification that they're about to turn us over to collections because we haven't paid a bill. And I'm like, what bill? I mean, and so there's a lot of business office miscommunication that goes on. And then we have a family member who needed to go see a doctor because of a situation they're having. And the doctor says they won't see them until the other doctor sends the medical records over. And oh, by the way, it's 3 months before you can get in to see the doctor.
So what's the choice?
And you have a blood clot, and you know you have a blood clot, but it's going to be 3 months. So what did they do? They used generative AI. They told them the symptoms, they told them the diagnosis, and they said, what should I be doing over the next 3 months while I'm waiting to go see a specialist?
And this particular one, it says, high-powered chipmaker NVIDIA has teamed with AI healthcare company Hippocratic AI to develop generative AI agents that not only outperform human nurses on video calls, but cost a lot less per hour. Nobody is trying to say that nurses don't earn their money. They do. There's just not enough of them.
There's a shortage, and
it's to some degree, it's probably an artificial shortage because these big hospital chains that are owned by hedge funds or whoever owns them, they don't want a lot of people.
No, they would rather you wait in the waiting room.
And we see that. Anyway, we could go off for an hour just on how bad our healthcare is. I think you're going to continue to see more of this, and I think the pushback you're going to get from the medical community isn't going to work. People will do it anyway. It'll be like that dark web. People are going to do it anyway.
I don't know if it's the medical community that's going to push back. I think it's the companies that own the hospitals that are going to push back. Because if I'm a nurse and I'm having to work 60 hours a week because they don't have enough nurses on staff, and I have an AI that can answer some questions so that maybe I only have to work 50 hours a week, then that's going to be okay with me.
Yeah. Our local hospital, we tried to get my dad admitted. They said the hospital was full. It wasn't full. It wasn't even close to full. They didn't have enough staff, so they closed off a section of the hospital, and they could hire the staff. They just don't because it's more profitable not to. Anyway, So Fox Business News, NVIDIA, AI, and healthcare. So moving on to what we all know is coming.
This is an opinion piece. Here. It's not coming. It's here.
It's an opinion piece, govtech.com, about AI turbocharging disinformation attacks on voters. The reason, we all know this, but what I thought was interesting was who they're targeting. I kind of thought it would be more general. Well, first of all, who's doing the targeting?
Countries that are not the United States.
they're really trying to sow chaos, and it does work. And they said in 2016, the Russian disinformation program zeroed in on communities of color. They created Instagram accounts, Twitter accounts. They masqueraded as people of color's voices. They produced fake news websites. Now the targets for this election are a little broader, and now it's immigrants and communities of color.
Anyone who tends to distrust government agencies.
They distrust democratic systems, or they face language barriers, or they have lack of technology. This is what this is all talking about. And that makes it very difficult. One example they gave is like California has large communities of immigrants, and these are not illegal immigrants. Well, maybe some of them are, but we're talking about legal as well. But they have limited knowledge of English, and so they mentioned Asian Americans, Latinos are particularly vulnerable. 2/3 of Asian American and Pacific Islander populations are immigrants. So again, this is one of those things where we're letting other countries
decide how we think,
decide how we vote. That's what's frightening. And that their agenda, besides sowing chaos, is to get people sympathetic to them in office. That's what scares me the most, is they're trying to not just sway our election, they're trying to sway how our country operates externally in their favor. It's not a good thing to think about, but anyway, that's in govtech.com. And the next one I found, which I thought was interesting, was in arstechnica.com.
Ars Technica?
That's what it looks like to me.
Ars, okay.
But I'll let you read the headline this time.
Biden orders every U.S. agency to appoint a chief AI officer. Every U.S. agency. That's a lot of agencies.
Federal agencies rush to appoint chief AI officers with significant experience.
You're available.
I don't know what they call significant, but if the money's right, somebody call me, contact us through AI.
We'll be moving to Washington.
Maybe I could do that remotely. But
maybe.
You know what? I'll move to D.C.
if the money's right.
Well, not only that, it's got to be fun, though.
Yeah.
I really want that to be fun. So they says any agency that has not must appoint a senior official over the next 60 days.
What's the purpose of this?
My assumption is they're trying to figure out how AI is going to affect them. They want people basically kind of spearheading each agency's either using or, there's positive and negatives that you have to look at. The positives being, inventory systems or streamlining, paperwork or whatever. But there's also safety and security and
risk
assessments and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has got to be we've seen that at the school. If we have something new and somebody's not driving it, then it's one of those things, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to be very unorganized.
One of the things I think is interesting within the articles, it says that they are encouraged to prioritize AI development and adoption for the public good and where the technology can be helpful in understanding and tracking large societal challenges, such as using AI to improve the accessibility of government services. One of the things, we just had a long conversation with some people that were from a federal region center. And one of the things they talked about was the websites and all the information that you could actually find that the government can help you do things like grants and programs. And there's all this stuff that's out there that the government's been providing for a long time, but it's so hard to figure out where to find it and how to get it.
Yes.
And they were trying to figure out how to use AI to help people, navigate all the different programs that the government has.
We also watched a YouTube video about that, where the guy was trying to get his grandmother help,
mm-hmm.
and he couldn't. He has a degree in computer science, and he couldn't figure out how to use the website to get his coverage. She's a vet.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't figure out how to get her help. So it's interesting because I also just read an article today that Google has set aside a $20 million grant program for people specifically that are doing stuff for the public good with AI. So you can get grant money. I think public education is public service for the good. Can we get one of those grants?
Public education needs it.
So maybe we should apply for a Google grant to help with, we think it's public service. So anyway, so I thought that was interesting. That was arstechnica.com. And in the vein of government and being useless, oh, wait a minute, I was supposed to say
No, hang on. The last one we just talked about was government being helpful.
That's true. So we're going to go the opposite extreme, except they don't feel like they're being useless. But AIbusiness.com.
Utah has passed legislation regulating the use of artificial intelligence.
Which, and when you read the headline, it sounds
hey,
good.
Somebody's on board. We're going to get some regulations in place. We're going to do a good job.
And they even say new state AI law allows companies to test AI applications for a year without regulatory interference. The problem I have was, unless they did something they didn't list in here to be a little more specific, they're using state consumer protection laws to find. Now, the fines aren't that big, but they say if they fail to disclose they are using the technology. Now, that's interesting. They'll be fined, administrative fine for up to $2,500 and/or civil penalties for up to $5,000. Now, let's look at that for a moment. Let's define exactly what AI is.
AI has been around for a really long time.
By some people's definition, not by ours.
Exactly, but that's what I'm sitting here saying. They're going to have to define, are they talking generative AI?
Large language models?
Are they talking machine learning type chatbots that have been around for a really long time?
And I was just talking to a company the other day that sells to HP. They sell switches and stuff. Now, of course, they said they've been in AI since 2016. I kind of disagree with that because I define AI, machine learning is a subset of AI.
Correct.
And most of what people talk about, like object recognition on cameras, is that AI? Well, if you look at the business stuff nowadays,
it used not to be.
It used to not be. Now all of a sudden everything is AI. So does that mean that if I buy a switch, they have to disclose they have machine learning or AI built in? What if I can't even tell you. It's in everything. So what's going to happen is I'm going to put it in a disclaimer.
And you're never going to notice it.
You're
just going to click that
you're going to have to click that little accept.
And then that's going to be it.
It'll probably meet the
it'll meet the criteria. I was on a service call the other day. We have products that we have to return for repair occasionally. And so I was on the service call, and it starts out with saying that I'm talking to a chatbot, which is not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need this? Here's an article. Did the article help? What's the serial number? What's your name? All the stuff that you fill out for the chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
And then it said it was transferring me to an agent.
Sounds good.
Sounds great. Went to the agent. The agent said hello, told me their name, all of this stuff on a chat. Very friendly. I was going through it. I wasn't getting anywhere. Wasn't really getting anywhere. I finally ended up picking up the phone and I talked to somebody. And when I was talking to the person on the phone, I said, well, in the chat, Titania or Tatiana or whatever her name was that I was conversing with said to do this. And the lady said, oh, that's our AI bot.
Which you considered how much you interact with AIs, the fact that you didn't recognize that?
I did not know.
That tells you how good they're getting.
I was starting to suspect
based on the answers given.
The answers were getting circular. A little repetitious.
Yeah.
And she said the only way I could get around it was to go ahead and say, connect me to an expert. And it would come back and say, I can help you, connect me to an expert. And that's how I finally got around and was talking to a human.
Well, and that, when you look at that, that's what this law is talking about. But unfortunately, they focus so narrowly, they don't understand that it's going to trivialize it because people are just going to put in their acceptable use stuff. And people click through that stuff I click through that stuff all the time. Nobody reads 20 pages of acceptable use.
The other problem that I have with it and how vague they're writing all of these things is because I write LinkedIn posts and I will write my post. I will put it into Grammarly to check my grammar. Where's my parentheses? Where's my, and sometimes Grammarly will come up and say, hey, this sentence is easier to read. You want to change that sentence? And I'll say, yes, actually, it does sound easier. It does read easier. Do I have to put in everything I post anywhere I post it that I was assisted by AI? Would they fine me if they find out that I used Grammarly to help correct my
Technically,
grammar?
yes. And they even define regulated occupations like medical professionals or teachers. So now if a teacher sends an email, who cares if a teacher uses Grammarly on the email and that Grammarly uses an AI? What does that do for them to tell the parent that? How does that help? All it does is give people another excuse to complain about teachers not doing something or anyway. I understand the medical one. I even understand the chatbot thing you mentioned because that's annoying.
Right.
And they could have easily put a little thing said
AI
AI agent.
I am an AI agent.
That I get that, but when you start talking about everybody wants to regulate everything about teachers nowadays. Of course, I could get off on a rant about public education, but I won't. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. I thought it was I would categorize that as yet another vague, unfunded mandate that nobody's going to know how to do. We get a lot of those in education, so I'm not surprised.
Yes.
So we're about halfway done, so we're going to move on to the hype cycle, I think is what it was called originally.
Well, we talked about this on our last podcast. Is the bubble about to pop? Is the AI bubble going to do what a lot of different bubbles do, and everyone jumps on, and everyone evangelizes, and everyone shouts from the rooftops, and everyone makes a lot of money?
We wrote an article in the meeting
about that.
We talked about, I picked my own terms though. I didn't call it the bubble and all that stuff necessarily. I said stuff about the evangelists from the rooftop versus the contrarians.
Yes.
Which is kind of funny but anyway, let's back up a second. Let's talk about what this means. The Gartner Group, which is a research group, they've been around long. I don't know how long they've been around a long time, but I thought this went back even further than that, but the references I found when I was doing a little research was the first hype cycle was drawn on a board or shown in February of 1995 at the Gartner Group. And basically it showed what looks like sort of it's a curve, you have a technology trigger.
Like a bell curve.
You have a technology trigger, and then some they list here at the time that this was done was emergent computation, wireless communications, this is 1995, intelligent agents, information, all this stuff goes up, and then they call it the peak of inflated expectations. That's when the bubble's at its, biggest. Well, then you have the trough of disillusionment. Basically, it crashes, and it looks like the whole market's going to go away, and sometimes it does. And then you start the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity. I like the terms. And they list in 1995, they have all this stuff like virtual reality was listed, which I thought was interesting, video conferencing, handwriting recognition, object-oriented programming. These are all along various parts of this curve. Speech recognition at the time was on the slope of enlightenment. It was moving up. And then knowledge-based systems. You mentioned that when we were talking about school district using data and the World Wide Web, allowing them to that you were correct. That was in the plateau of productivity around that time.
Yes.
And because World Wide Web wasn't very old then, a couple of years. So the point is AI at the peak of inflated expectations?
Yeah, I
would say what I call AI 1.0, I would agree with.
Absolutely.
What is AI 1.0? That's a good question.
That's a good question. Yeah. For me? Are you going to test me?
Would you rather I answer that one?
Yes, I would, because we have different definitions about what AI 1.0 is.
For me, AI 1.0, because I've spent the last over a year, I was like a lot of people. I had experience with making neural nets. Well, okay, maybe not a lot of people, but creating my own neural nets, doing my own machine learning stuff, even computer vision.
I heard it. I was at a symposium thing in Austin, and I heard it from numerous people. I was doing AI before ChatGPT, and I'm like,
you were doing machine learning.
You were doing machine learning before ChatGPT.
At least by what the standard definition now has to do with generative AI and large language models. Right. We had cameras on our porch that I put in years ago that had computer vision built into them because I wanted to recognize. I had to point it down a little bit because there's so many cars on the road. It kept triggering the motion. I wrote code when I worked for Motorola specifically for computer vision machine to learn how to, when things are moving through videos, all of that used some form of machine learning. So you could, with that argument, you could say I've been doing it for 30 years or at least 25.
But for generative AI.
Generative AI is very, very recent, so I've been doing that a little longer.
So what is the peak of inflated expectations for AI 1.0?
Well, think about what it is right now. Right now, it's mostly chatbots. It's a helper. It's call it what you want, but you've got chatbots that they've been using. Microsoft's been using. Well, OpenAI is a chatbot. The ChatGPT is a chatbot. Google had several variations they've already come out with. Pi, all these different things are all chatbots, and they're kind of
communicate.
And they were kind of a bolt-on. They weren't integrated into anything per se. They were mostly just used as a way for you to interact with information. The one I built for the school, Agnes, that was using retrieval augmented generation, which is short, which is RAG. And again, it was using this idea of bringing in context so it can synthesize answers, but it's still a chatbot.
Yes.
So that's 1.0. And I think 1.0 is getting very close to the bubble. And what did I say was, we were talking about this last year in our podcast. What I said was 2024 is going to be the year of a couple of things. One of them was the year of hardware, and one of them was the year of agents. Agents are what's coming with 2.0. So 1.0, I think, is probably getting that peak of inflated expectations. And it's funny because as I was doing research for this, there was people, the contrarians, predicting the hype bubble popping 9 months ago.
Oh, well,
10 months
and
ago.
then as soon as it
That was
does
those
pop, they're
contrarians.
going to say,
I told
we
you
were
so.
right.
I told you so.
I told you so.
Because if I say it's going to happen often enough
I'm
and long
going to
enough,
predict that the sun's going to come up tomorrow.
Yeah,
Guess what?
all I have to do is wait 24
I might just have to wait, but it's going to happen.
Anyway, so yes, I think that's about to happen. So what's coming? What's next? Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the new stuff associated with it. I think this one's very relevant.
OpenAI and Microsoft plan 100 billion AI Stargate.
They call it the Stargate program, which I thought was interesting because if you watch Stargate, which
of course we watched
Stargate was actually a portal that opened us up to alien interference from all over the world and all this. So it's an interesting choice of titles for their project, but it's a $100 billion supercomputer. And it's supposed to launch in 2028. And basically, it's
That's
one of
a
those.
long time.
2028 for AI, it's a long time. But you're talking about, not a lot of years from now.
Maybe they're thinking they're going to try to get it right before they launch it.
Well, remember I said the year of hardware?
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft's already been working on building their own AI chips. Intel's got their own AI chips. You and I saw a very interesting analog AI chip thing the other day. We've got Grog, that's a AI chips. So a lot of hardware. Well, guess where all that hardware is going? It's going to these supercomputing centers that they're going to use for really fast inferencing, which is basically answering questions. And they're going to use it for training and running agents and all this other stuff. So I think that's part of.
They have to wait for the hardware to be there.
It's got to catch up. It's got to catch up. So I think that's an important part of it. And the next thing I thought was interesting was, again, when you start talking about agents, especially.
This one's a little scary to me. I wish they would have drawn a different picture.
This is an AI business.
Whoever did this marketing-wise, I don't think they did a good job.
Well, they keep picking the wrong things to compare it to.
Yeah.
The Borg, which is a Star Trek term, the Borg, that didn't turn out well for humanity.
No, it did not.
And so, but basically what they're talking about is AI is being able to share information like a hive mind, which again is frightening.
And AI to another AI?
Yes. And again, that's that. I'm already working on my own variation of an agentic, is what they call it, or agent-based system. Well, in an agent-based system, which is where 2.0, this new hardware, and 2.0 is going to be about integrating it into things in a more useful way. Because a chatbot, they're right, a chatbot is only marginally useful because it does text only.
Right.
We need multimodal, which is coming with 2.0. It also, we need the ability for these things to do tasks for us. Like that rabbit that I ordered that's not here yet, you keep getting rolling your eyes at me about. I've been working with another set of tools, but basically the idea is I want to ask it to do something, and it does it. I don't have to watch it do it. I don't have to enter information for it to do it. And people already have variations on this now. The problem with it right now is that it's like that guy that asked an agent to go off and do something, and then he went home for the weekend, and the two agents, that sharing thing, were talking to each other, but they got in an argument with each other, and nobody would let up and let the other one win. So you had a $5,000 token bill by Monday morning. Charges from OpenAI for using all those tokens for inference, or for the AI inferencing. So there's some issues that got to be worked out. But I'm even working on it, like I said, for Agnes, because I want it to be more useful in the classroom for teachers. I want teachers to be able to have it's sort of a super Siri, super Alexa kind of interactive thing, but they shouldn't have to babysit it to do it. They should say, I do this, and then if it takes a while, it goes off and does it and it comes back. So 2.0 is about making it useful. It's about building better hardware. It's about integrating it in a way that's useful to where you can get it to do things for you in a better way. It takes raw data, turning it into knowledge was 1.0. Now utilizing that knowledge in a more productive way, that's 2.0.
What's 3.0?
You don't want to know.
I don't want to know what 3.0 is.
You don't want to know what 3.0. I'll tell you in a minute if you really want to know.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left on our podcast, so would you like to share what, let's finish our little things about our 2.0.
This one's a short one. This one is piemounts.com. Anyway, this is, again, talking about the AI hype and how people are hyping it so hard. You and I saw this. We've been to shows. Last year, they had camera systems that could recognize objects and move it. Like I said, I worked on back when I worked for Motorola. And all of a sudden, everything had an AI attached to it.
How did that happen so fast?
So it's like, how did you suddenly
become... rebranded.
They just, anything that had OpenCV, which is the one that I use for my camera system here, and what I used probably when we wrote our own version of Motorola. But anyway, those things are all got rebranded as AI. The term they said it's similar to is greenwashing, where as soon as the environmental causes, I remember when everything was going to organic, suddenly they were slapping organic or trying to, so they had opened up another term called natural, which had nothing to do with it. So everybody wanted to slap that label on it, and that's what they're talking about here. They're basically drowning out the good stuff with all that noise, and it's making people distrust the idea of the technology because all of the, not only the contrarians, but people just flat out exaggerating its capabilities.
Yeah, and when you have purchased it and you get it and you're going, wait a second, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
This is not doing near what I thought it was going to be.
So it's really making people distrust what AI means.
So 3.0, we don't have a lot of time, but we'll talk. What is 3.0 to me? 1.0 is chatbots. 2.0 is the agents, the interactive. The problem with 1.0 and even with 2.0, when you start building these tools like I'm doing now, you're still utilizing. We spent all the 90s, even the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all that time period, people were doing, and especially with the World Wide Web, they were taking information and they were making it structured. They took unstructured things, they made databases, they put databases online, but interacting with them, we used coding languages like C++ and Python. This was all built in a way where it's kind of fragmented. And when you've seen it at school, when you wanted to get information out of our student information system that you have to get to the state, there's a process, a set of steps you have to go through that aren't really that intuitive. You had to learn these, I got a CSV file, I got to rearrange this. That's all human created. We understand it. We created the languages that do it. They have a deterministic output and they make sense to us. I call that the fabric. The whole fabric of the data that's out there on the internet is consistently, it's kind of fragmented, but for humans, it's somewhat consistent and we know how to do it. The problem is they're going to let these AI systems start rewriting that fabric in a way that's not more efficient or more readable for humans, but it's for AIs. So suddenly all this fabric that's underlying all this data and all these things that are going on, it stops being understood by humans. We already don't understand why neural nets. I mean, neural nets are built with, they have these things called weighting functions where they weight the path that the reconstruction of that next word goes through that neural net is based on these weighting functions, but we really don't clearly understand why choices are made.
It's like you push the button and you're like, I don't know why it works, but it works.
To some degree, that's kind of what these neural nets are. When I created my first neural net and I started working, I remember it was the one where it would recognize that somebody was moving on the screen. I had no idea how it worked. I started playing with the weighting functions and it just went off in one direction. I only had like 8 neurons in mine. These are multi-layer complex neural networks. But when you start using those things to rewrite the tools that you then use to create new things with, and the tools themselves become not understandable,
humans are going to lose control.
That's when 3.0, that's when it's fantastic in the sense of its abilities are amazing. Because it's real. I mean, I struggle right now when I'm rebuilding the new Agnes. I'm struggling because I have to find the right framework and tool set to allow you to create what I want it to do. And I want it to connect to this data source and this data source. And I want to do these things. I'm not connecting to student information, just so everybody's clear on that. This is just things that I want teachers to be able to do.
Things that are already publicly.
Well, and these are to make teachers have more efficiency and not just a chatbot that generates a cool lesson, but actually makes their classroom. I call it a smart classroom or a smart campus. But I know as much as I'm struggling, I still can figure those tools out because they're written by humans for humans to understand it. Remember, computers are ones and zeros. We don't do ones and zeros very well. So what did we do? We created a layer on top of it, which I used to work with. This is assembly language. Assembly language is made for human readable. Didn't help the computers at all. Then we created macro languages. Then we created C. and those type of languages, which were functional languages on top of that. And we created another language and then Python, languages like that are higher. Each higher level language was simply to hide complexity underneath so we could understand it.
And then they're going to go off in 3.0.
But when they hide that and each layer gets rewritten by an AI, how do you understand it? Anyway, that's 3.0.
We're out of time. We are out of time, and we are going to have to get off right now, and we are going to